All right. And here's Mr. Bradley.
Morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I look forward to these TA calls so much. Um, and one of the reasons that's true is because um, I don't always get to interact with people who have two qualifications for engaging in advocacy and policy at the statewide level. One, as people who have lived through the system before, as parents, maybe as young people, but also as people who are now trained, credentialed, and understand the system and are helping families navigate it currently. Those are two extremely valuable perspectives. And not only do I want to listen to you and hear from you about what things matter, what you're seeing happening in your community, what the system's getting right, what the system's getting wrong, what needs to change, but also that elected leaders are going to want to hear that they're going to stop and listen to you because you have that dual credibility. And so we're going to talk a bit today about the legislative process. I'm sure this might be review for most of you, but we'll still do a little refresher. We'll also talk about the set of priorities that Families Together has and is advocating for right now in the state budget process, which is already underway. And then we'll talk about ways to get involved, ways to get engaged, promote our Family Empowerment Day march and rally at the Capitol coming up March 30th, which is always a great day. And I hope to see many of you there. And hopefully you'll come out of this feeling ready and motivated to go fight for your own families, for the families that you work with, and for your communities at large. I want to start by hearing from you. And so I'm going to pass to Hope, one, to introduce herself, and to kick us off with a little live polling. Hope?
Good morning, everyone. I'm bringing sunshine. It's raining here in New York City, but I'm feeling so much sunshine and so much love just by being on this phone call with all of you. You know, it's a very busy time, but the work that you do is just very phenomenal and is much needed. And families cannot do what they need to do to navigate their lives without you. So I just wanted to thank you. My name is Hope Newton. I am the public policy coordinator, working with the wonderful Brad Hansen, who I'm learning so much from. And I'm just opening, and I still continue to learn. This is something that we've done before, and I would just like to encourage everyone to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, where you're from, what organization you work for, and, just give me some thumbs up once you've done it. Thank you. If if one or two people would like to share anything about their work and what brings them here, I'm open to that. So anyone, feel free to come off the mic.
I'm Vanessa G. Oh, go ahead.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't know if you're talking to me or somebody else.
Oh, just you're on the call, so it's you for now.
All right. Okay. So my name is Farah Reyes. I am a family advocate now. I currently work in the Bronx with Together for Youth, but I've been in this field now for about 15 years. And I started as a youth advocate with Vibrant Mental Health as when it first opened the Family Resource Center. And I believe in this work so much.
I think all of us believe in this work because it is so important in changing the trajectories of family and children's lives when they have someone who understands. Anyone else? Just one more person before we go to the Mentimeter.
Okay, good morning. Great morning to everyone. My name is Leslie. I work for SCO, Family of Services in Jamaica, Queens. I am new to all this. I am also I'm a family peer advocate, but I'm also a community health worker. So I'm here just to pull information because, as I said, I'm new to all this. So I'm just here to just to figure out what's happening, what's going on, and I'm excited about what's going to take place. So Glad to be here.
All
Thank you.
right. So anyone who's new to this work has also experienced what it means to work and to have some challenges going through it. So you're new to the work on the other side of the table, but you're not new to the work from what your experience is. Everybody here has been impacted by something, and we can use our experience to leverage. And that's what we're talking about today. Let's go to the Mentimeter. Has everyone here dealt with a Mentimeter before? We're going to put a couple of questions in the Mentimeter. I think the first one is, what motivated you to attend this presentation? So there's a number of ways you could go to the Mentimeter. You can call, you can go to the chat and click on the Mentimeter. You can, click on the QR code. So let's just get some responses into what motivated you to attend this presentation. And I will go to the Mentimeter myself.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
And just to explain further, I put the link in the chat so you can click that, or you can go to menti.com and use that code, or you can use your phone and use your camera to scan the QR code and you can get in that way. Keep going, Hope. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Oh, man. Okay, we've got some things coming in. People are excited to learn. Somebody heard Brad Hanson was presenting. That's an interesting one. Brad always presents, and he's always a lot of fun, lots of energy to connect with others, to hear what other FPAs are doing. I'm new to this work, but not new to working with children and families. Need to be informed. In order for us to do this work, we're always willing to learn and learn more in terms of what we can do to advocate. Somebody said, I think it's mandatory for an FBA to be knowledgeable in all aspects. Trying to find common experiences when working with other peers and to learn from one another. So we have 14 of 20 people responded. Brad, what do you think? Are we ready to go to the second question for the Mentimeter, or hold on? I'm following your lead.
I'm following your lead. What do you say?
We got 15 of 21, just to respect people's time so that people have other opportunities to chime in or ask questions later. I think we can move to the next one. We'll know our youth mental health system is perfect when? When will you know that the youth mental health system is perfect? What has to happen? What do you need to see? That may take a little bit of thought. I know it takes some thought for me, but I'm going to jump in and jump on that Mentimeter myself. Okay, I submitted mine. Let's see what's coming up. When any and all people who need mental health services are receiving said services. There isn't the same need for our services, meaning when the need for our services shifts. And if I butchered that, somebody please come off the chat and let me know to correct me. I don't always get it right. So when we don't need community residences and when we literally work ourselves out of our jobs, it may never be perfect, but we need to be ever vigilant to keep it on track. Hear, hear. When our youth are no longer incriminated for mental health behaviors, yes, how do we remove the stigma when they aren't criminalized for being, for having these behaviors? We hear less SI and more youth asking for help. Youth mental health systems has evolved to a level that serves folks' needs with less than a 30-day wait period to engage in services. Somebody says, I'll be out of a job. Honestly, I don't think it will ever be perfect because it's constantly changing and new information, new ideas, and those are the things that we're working on when it comes to Families Together New York State, FTNYS, in terms of our advocacy. When families and young people get services free at the point of contact and simply walk into their local provider's door and start getting help, that is a dream that we're all looking forward to. We stop losing youth lives to mental health issues. Interventions are introduced, present, and available for all in our communities. Support is available the same day it is needed. Services are located where youth already are. I think we're all on the same page in thinking about this and in terms of what the fight is to move towards that. What do you think, Brad? Ready to go to the third one?
I think that's all of them.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you, everyone. So, Families Together. The thing I'm excited about working with Families Together is because of what we do. We work with peers, we work with youth peer advocates, and we're a statewide family network that works on developing the power of youth and those who've been impacted. And we have a number of advocates, chapters, affiliates, and regional staff in every part of the state. So it's a statewide nonprofit that is uplifting the voices of folks who are impacted, making sure that people who are interested in working with youth and families, get the credentials and the training that's necessary. And our policy department, what we do in the policy team, we mobilize our network to leverage your lived experience in campaigns and to change systems and impact families and people at every level of government. That's what we do. And that's what we've been doing for years. Next slide, please. So basically what we do is we bring the lived expertise to transform, change systems. And we're working on the belief that we aren't just our stories. We are leaders. We are leaders. We're experts in our own experience. And there's some clout to that. That's something that we should not be ashamed of. That's something that is kind of like a superpower in order to leverage your experience and how you got through and how you're using that to engage in advocacy, engage in youth councils, engaged in grassroots outreach and engagement. You're telling your story. You're involved in media advocacy, legislative development and empowerment. You're learning about the system and how to touch those levers in the system for change. And then we're always evaluating for continuous development. Our workforce and development team has lots of trainings that go beyond and extend beyond the basic training that you got as an FPA and a YPA. Next slide, please. I think this is Brad's expertise here.
Thanks, Hope. So we are in the middle of legislative session. I'm sure you've all heard that term before. In New York State, that is the time period between January and June when elected leaders, your state senators, your state assembly members, there's about 212 of them. They come up to Albany for weeks, making big decisions about where state tax dollars are going to be spent, what resources they're going to be investing in, and making rulings on laws and policy changes that are going to impact the way that families experience systems. That process starts in January. The state has its own constitution that says that the state addressed has to be delivered first few weeks of January, and that the governor has to submit her proposal, her executive budget proposal, to the legislature. This is her ideas, what she thinks the state tax dollars should be going towards, what policy changes might need to happen, and then the state legislature and the advocates react. We're like, this is good, this is bad, you missed this, you forgot about this. That's the push and pull that we're in right now. So in the late January to February period, that's really where we are in this exact moment. You're going to be having hearings. The legislature holds joint hearings on the budget. You might have saw Khadija Abdulaziz, our youth policy coordinator, present our budget priorities to the state legislature. There's a video of it that we've been circulating. That's part of our role, is to hear from you all year round, set policy ideas and agendas in collaboration with coalitions, and then fight for those things. And so that's the moment we're in now. We're moving towards March, where we expect the Senate and the Assembly to offer their counter proposals. So the governor put her piece out, the world reacts, and now the Senate and the Assembly are designing their own opinion on what the state's priorities ought to be. The Senate will publish their own, the Assembly will publish their own, and those are what we'll forever refer to as the one house bills. And then once they release those, that's usually sometime in the first or second week of March, the three-way negotiations begin. These used to be referred to as the three men in the room, because you'd have the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate or the Assembly Speaker, and the governor. But now we have two women and a guy in a room. So that's progress. But in any case, our job is sort of to influence that process in favor of our priorities. And that process is going to be going on all the way up to April 1st, often and lately. That process probably will go later, maybe into the first or second week of April. And so that's a big part of all the things, resources, money. That's what the budget season's about. After budget season, we're going to be moving into, there's no it's sort of a bunch of colloquial terms for this, but like policy season, legislative session, but basically, or the post-budget. These are all things that have typically no fiscal impact, no money involved. These are bill changes, there's laws and policy. And so an example of that would be like our Solutions Not Suspensions Act, which doesn't have a fiscal impact. It mainly is a rule change, says when schools can and can't use suspensions. And so that's an example of something that we'll be working very hard on in the post-budget season. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's talk about the landscape now. What's the governor thinking? What's on her mind? Well, there's a few different pieces at play here. One that I think we all understand, is that there's a lot of uncertainty around the new federal administration's bill funding priorities and the impact that has on states. You've heard of the big, beautiful bill that is anything but, that has resulted in lots of cuts to essential state programs and funding streams like Medicaid, SNAP, education, TANF, all sorts of things that the state relies on federal funding to then pass on to parents and families in our communities, are being cut by the billions. And so that's definitely impacting the way that our state government is thinking about budgets. The good news is that, well, Wall Street had a pretty good year this year. There was a lot of bonuses. The state gets a cut from those Wall Street bonuses, and so tax receipts are higher than expected, which means that the gap between federal cuts and and the state spending is a little less wide. And so this kind of lets the state punt a little bit in terms of their priorities and spending. And a lot of the federal cuts are actually slated to impact later. So really next budget season, this is going to be especially impactful. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of debate about, well, should we be raising revenue via maybe taxes on the most wealthy individuals and corporations in the state? Should we start cutting back on spending? Should we implement cuts? Who loses, who wins? That's the kind of decisions that the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor are going to be arguing over. And then, of course, this is an election year. And so the governor, as we understand it, and the rest of the legislature are looking for some easy wins, things that they can tout on the campaign trail. They're also not trying to rock the boat, not trying to attract super PACs and people who can spend money on negative ads against them. So they're not trying to do anything too controversial, nor are they trying to upset progressive forces who maybe want things like investments in childcare. So that's why you'll see they did actually put some money into universal childcare this year. I will forever share this slide because once this quote hit print, I'm never letting this go. At a podium that says tackling the youth mental health crisis at her State of the State address a couple years ago, she said, for decades, our mental health system was deprioritized and defunded. Make no mistake, this is the defining challenge of our time. And it is our job, I think, our responsibility to hold her to that statement, to that promise. Because this is the context that she is right. This is what she was talking about. Governors for the past 20 years have decided not to invest in inflationary cost increases. Every year, inflation impacts us as households. This is true for agencies who serve families in the human services world. In behavioral health specifically, these numbers are actually higher because this is a sort of out-of-date slide. But the point being, really close to $700 to $900 million has been essentially divested from the mental health and addiction system because they did not implement these cost of living adjustments for funding rates and contracts with the state. And so when people say that these jobs don't pay well, when there's high vacancy rates, when there's high turnover rates, when there's long wait lists and provider shortages, we can look to the decisions that our government made for the past 20 years. They called this savings. They thought they were doing the taxpayers a favor. But in reality, what they were doing was starving a system that desperately needed to keep up with the cost of inflation and frankly, probably needed investment beyond that, right? And so that's the context in which she has finally put forward this governor.
Hey, Brad.
Hey.
I'm sorry. I'm monitoring the chat. So you did have a question from the other slide. Somebody wanted you to kind of just really help them understand
what is CPI? Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that means Consumer Price Index,
Mm-hmm.
and that's basically how the government measures inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll look. Inflation's essentially just prices. So when prices go up, that's inflation. And so in the case of agencies, the state may pay them a set price, but if inflation's happening, that means the price of everything is going up, and so you're essentially cutting if you don't increase the pay. Does that make sense? And so the government.
I just never saw it as CPI before. That's all.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's the specific data mechanism they decide. So like this year, for instance, they said, okay, from July of this year to last year, it was 2.7% inflation. They kind of choose a set of like, all right, how much did food cost? How much did gas prices rise? How much did insurance rise? And they look at that basket of goods, and then they say they kind of average it, and they're like, all right, that's how much inflation there was this year. So that's what the COLAs are based on.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Good question. So it is in that context that we have to acknowledge, when someone does something good. This governor has done 3 years of some form of inflationary increase. And this year she proposed another. Now, when I say targeted inflationary increase, just know that I'm referring to the artist formerly known as the COLA. That they changed the name. Is now referred to as a TII. I'll keep referring to it as COLA just for continuity's sake. But that's what they're talking about. Now, that's the good. The bad is that this governor has kind of cut us short, even if she's doing a good thing. So when I said the CPI was 2.7%, and then she said she'll propose in her budget, I'll give a targeted inflationary increase of 1.7%. The math's not mathing there, and that means that we are falling behind, that the rate of inflation is exceeding the rate of our cost of living adjustments for the field as a whole. Our rates, our contracts are not keeping up with the price increases, which means cuts. And so even under this governor's tenure, we're looking at like 7.8% that has fallen short, that she's fallen short on. And so even though we are getting something, we're still falling behind. And so as advocates, we're saying, no, you got to go further than that. You have to give at least what the inflation was for this past year. So she put that in her budget. She put an expansion towards universal childcare in her budget. So that part of that expansion is that people that make about 100 households that make 115,000 a year are going to qualify for childcare subsidies. So that went up more than $10,000. That's been creeping up over her time. It started like 80 something, went up to 92. Now it's up to 115. So more and more families are becoming eligible for assistance for childcare, and that's a good thing. She's included money for supportive housing programs. She's expanding 7 new clubhouses and 4 new youth safe spaces across New York State. We say they should be in every county. She's put more money into teen mental health first aid. She's pushing for behavioral health licensure that's more integrated, easier to get, and expanding that. She maintains Raise the Age with no rollbacks. But she also does not introduce new funding. So these are some things that I want to highlight from the budget, good and bad. Her executive budget. This is just her proposal for now. So what did she miss? Well, one thing that we've been pushing for is to carve behavioral health services out from Medicaid managed care and reinvest the money that they make in profits back into the system. So talking about rate increases, talking about grants and funding directly to family peer support and youth peer support programs in the broader behavioral health system. How do we pay for that? Well, we can look to the for-profit insurance companies who have been put in charge of our public health system, Medicaid, and do a lot of the same things that people in the private insurance side who experience the private insurance side don't like about that system. Think about things like ghost networks, out-of-network costs, not having providers in your network, people not accepting new clients, denying claims, delaying payments to providers. All these things we know that they do in the behavioral health system. That's actually why we had to pass parity parity laws 2 decades ago because they didn't treat mental health the way that they treated physical health, and they were actually forced to do so by law, even though they failed to do that. Those same actors are in charge of our Medicaid system, which is the biggest payer for behavioral health in the state. And so we have to resolve these contradictions. We suggest that get the middlemen, these for-profit insurance companies, out of Medicaid when it comes to behavioral health. They shouldn't stand between providers and the people who need services, and then reinvest the money they've been making back into the system. The governor was hot and cold on this. She decided not to introduce it, but we have support from the agencies. Department of Health and the Office of Mental Health are okay with this. They think it's time. And so we are working hard to get the Senate and the Assembly on board on this to see if we can get it into the final enacted budget. I'm going to pause there because that's, I know, sort of a complicated one. Would this be removing the MCOs? Yes, that is essentially what this is calling for, is getting them out of the behavioral health game and going back to state fee-for-service. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what could we do with that money? Well, we could expand $1650 and get more general funding for family and youth peer support. We could expand grants. We could make sure that Mahoders, or the clinic rates, Article 31 clinic rates for peers, are aligned with peers in other settings. We could expand funding for CFTSS and HCBS services and increase those rates so that people can get paid decently and living wages, while also being able to serve tens of thousands of additional young people, and we could get the full COLA. That's what's missing in the governor's budget. Those are the things that we're going to keep pushing for. Some other pieces here we want you to be aware of. We have actually, oh, this is a Hope's thing. Sorry, Hope.
Muted for once. So Brad and I, we work together. So we're really talking about what's missing for economic well-being. And we're basically talking about what it means to have deeper investments, as Brad talked about, when it comes to things like housing, food benefits, cash assistance, the things that support families, the things that, you know, kind of feed into the social determinants of health to make sure that families have can do better with what they have. So here's some things that we are engaged in and working on. We're creating a child and family well-being fund of about $30 million. And basically what that initiative is to, you know, make sure that grassroots community-based organizations or organizations who are addressing those needs of families in communities are receiving funding. I mean, folks are paying their taxes. So if you're paying your taxes should come back to support you, you know, when we're working to strengthen families. And that's pretty much just a brief description of what the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund is. And Brad will correct me if I am off, because I've been doing this with Brad for about a year. Brad will add. So
I'm going to add.
Thank you.
I'm going to add, when it comes to the fund, everything that Hope said, and I think a translation here is, you know, in our world, we believe in, you know, family-driven, youth-guided. The Child and Family Wellbeing Fund's core idea is that communities impacted by exposure to the child welfare system, CPS calls, hotline calls, foster care penetration, young people aging out without permanency, the zip codes with the highest level of impact should be the ones who decide what services they get and who provides them. And so it is purely a huge part of our goal there is to make sure that the families with the highest level of impact have control. to solve their own problems and to direct those services rather than other people from the outside telling them what they need. And so that's a big part of what that fund is attempting to do. It has a deep engagement structure built into it. And Families Together played a huge role in designing that. And so this is sort of a new project, new in the past couple of years, but we got a white paper published about it, and the Assembly proposed it in their One House budget last year after just introducing it. So we think this issue has some legs. I just wanted to add that context. Thanks, Hope. Keep going.
Those are all the specific details that people need to understand it. White paper, question. Break down what a white paper is, Brad.
That's a research. That's a research paper. So basically, we had a team of people, which included parents and young people, doing the homework and demonstrating that this idea has sort of an academic grounding to it. That this isn't just something we made up. We've done sound research. We've thought through the principles of the fund and why this will work, why this is a better process. And so it's sort of like a longer, not just like a one pager, like this is, I think it's like almost a 17-page document that outlines the sort of principles and research that backs up this idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, that's a lot of work that we've been doing is reaching out to the communities that have, to those zip codes, connecting and identifying organizations so that we can present to them to find that, so that they learn more about what it is that we're doing, and they know more about the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund to create an awareness so that people to see where people are and what their thoughts are, because it's really about investing in the community, as Brad says. The other thing is we're talking about how to make sure that families get the things that they need when it comes to housing, that they're getting the cash assistance. We're looking at what it means to prevent homelessness. We talked about a lot of children aging out of foster care system, and what does that mean in terms of a lot are ending up homeless and dealing with some challenges. So what does that mean in terms of how we prevent that? So we have the $250 million housing access voucher program to aid nearly 15,000 families. We also we want them to make additional housing assistance available that's in alignment with the housing market. Housing is expensive all across the state, so there are voucher programs of the HUD and fair market rental level. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at addressing food insecurities for all households, families, regardless of what your immigration status is. There needs to be an increase in funding for emergency food systems and funding the WIC. All of that has been kind of shut down in some respect, and we need to strengthen those programs, because those programs are what gives people some level of stability, just a little bit. It doesn't take care of everything, but every little bit helps. So we're looking at strengthening cash assistance by increasing the basic allowance to address inflation, and eliminate public assistance resources limits. So these are the things, when we look at the things that make folks susceptible or vulnerable to child welfare, and systemic involvement and engagement and all of these things, we're looking at how do we come up with initiatives that address the economic needs for housing, food benefits, cash assistance, all of that, those basic needs. Exactly, Christine. If the basic needs are not met, then mental health cannot be successfully addressed and treated. Thank you so much. So can we go to the next slide? And Brad put in the chat information on the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund so that you can look at that. The other things are missing for education. For a number of years, we've been talking about solutions, not suspensions. And basically that initiative has been really about not putting something in place so that children are not being suspended for their behaviors. Children are being suspended for some of the challenges that they're addressing, even while they're waiting to have their IEPs fully evaluated. While they're going through that process, some are being suspended as young as, grade school. So solutions, not suspensions, is something that we've been working on for years to add $50 million to support the professional development of educators, behavioral interventionists, and restorative practices. There's been a lot of research on looking at alternatives to suspension, and restorative justice practices are things that are also being looked at on both sides. And then also expanding community schools and definitely moving closer to a universal after-school summer programming, because we know that there was some loss, during the pandemic, and we're still always looking at how to increase and build that up. So those are some things in terms of what's missing for education. Brad, how am I doing? You want to
You're
add
excellent.
anything? Okay.
No,
Next.
that's great. I'll take it from here.
Thank you.
So, we're involved beyond just mental health. We're also working on youth justice. We were one of the primary agents pushing successfully for the change to criminal responsibility, aka raise the age. There's been a lot of news about raise the age, and there are forces at work, the district attorneys, courts, police, and law enforcement, who are trying to push and sensationalize every single instance of someone who was young, who committed a crime, as a reason that raise the age should be rolled back. The reality is, the data shows pretty clearly that youth crime and youth arrests have been on the downward trajectory since raise the age was passed, with some minor flare-ups, statistically speaking, post-pandemic, when young people didn't have access to services and there was significant destabilization and disruption in our communities. And we have since recovered, and crime continues to go down, part of a longer decades trend. So we have fought back and successfully stopped the governor from considering rollbacks to raise the age. But there is one aspect of raise the age that we do feel that we did not get right, and that was resources. The funding mechanisms are county driven. They involve 3 separate state agencies approving county plans. And so hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that were appropriated for raise the age have gone unspent since 2018. Nearly $1.7 billion. And so we are saying create the Youth Justice Innovation Fund as an answer to that problem that would allow community-based organizations to apply directly to the state. So people closest to the problem in the communities that are struggling with youth crime or at-risk young people can get services rather than having to convince a county to invest. This is something that we think we have precedent for. The state has already done its own gun violence prevention program called Project Rise that really took those same principles I was talking about earlier with the fund and say, okay, communities, you tell us what you think is needed to address gun violence. That's Project Rise. And so we want to see a similar approach done for young people ages 15 to 25 or 12 to 25. Really start building in prevention at the community level to help young people stay on the right course to find employment and mentorship, education opportunities, all the things we know actually help young people stay out of the justice system. And so that's one thing that they did. The governor decided, I've done enough on raise the age. I don't think we need to invest more in young people. We could not disagree more with them on that. And so we're going to keep pushing to get the Youth Justice Innovation Fund into the One House budgets. And then on the child welfare side, I just want to call attention to a few different priorities. One is child welfare housing subsidies. Young people who are aging out of the foster care system need additional support Housing is out of control. Most people, if you have a family or a longer permanent resource, they'd help you transition out into independence. And frankly, like look at our healthcare system. You can stay on your parents' plan up to age 26. In the case of foster youth, the state is the legal response or the legally responsible entity that's supposed to be making sure those young people transition successfully. The pipeline of young people moving into homelessness from the foster care system is out of control. This is a common sense measure to make sure that they up to age 24 can be able to access that fund and that it's indexed to inflation so it doesn't get really small and meaningless years from now. Two other pieces just want to point out on the youth foster care side, the Foster Youth College Success Initiative needs to be expanded. This is going to help young people attain an education, which is a very clear indicator that they will have financial success and independence in their future. We also want to expand high quality parental legal representation statewide by adding $50 million to that budget. Parents who get involved in CPS cases need legal representation. We act like this is a harmless process. We know that it's not, that the stakes are high, and yet people don't always have access to an attorney in a timely manner, early in the case when it would be most impactful for them, nor is there high quality representation. And in fact, attorneys often don't know how to connect with or relate to or communicate with a parent who's under deep stress. And so when we say high quality, we usually mean they should have a parent advocate connected to them, working with the attorney, working with the parent to make sure that they understand what's going on, that they can navigate the system. So one way you could call this, you could really think about it as wraparound, but for parents who are dealing with legal representation in the family court system. And so we want to see investment there. I'm going to check the chat quick.
Brad,
That's right.
no questions at this time. Just
Okay.
comments about, children in foster care sign themselves out early without realizing what it is that they have to do, what they're responsible for, and how to follow those rules and guidelines because they just want to be out of the system. And that's what also lands them into being overwhelmed and ending up dealing with homelessness and those challenges.
Somebody, really quick, somebody did ask, Jenny asked, why the funds are unspent. And I think that was like the last thing you were talking about.
Oh, with Raise the Age?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a variety of reasons there, Jenny. As I said before, the counties sort of decide, and they're sort of, I think they're taking a risk because it's reimbursement based. So if they put a bunch of money down in investing, and the state decides that they don't, the fear there is that the state might not approve of all of the spending they did, or that someday they might take away the 100% reimbursement that Raise the Age funding gets, that then the county will be left sort of unable to, have to foot the bill themselves in the future. That's one element of it. I think another element of it is that counties aren't always the most inventive. I think many of you probably have worked with or interfaced with counties. They're sort of conservative in their outlook in a lot of ways. They're afraid to spend money or invest in programs they might see as risky, or they're not just simply not aware of them or familiar with them. And then on the community side, they're not always, a lot of grassroots organizations are probably busy doing the work on shoestring budgets if they have any money at all. And so they're not always the most sophisticated. They don't have like grant writers or like a deep finance team that can go and pursue that. And like, frankly, how it is you got to convince the county to invest in their program. And so those are some of the reasons. We've also heard that OCFS and DCGS and the Department of Budget have been sort of, they send the plans back once they're submitted and say, no, scale it back. And so the state's appropriated hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're being very they're not very uh, generous in what they say the counties can do. So the counties supposedly can do these things, but on paper, but the reality is the state's kind of pushing back and making them scale back. And that's resulted, I think, in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that just didn't get spent, despite, to your point, a lot of need. I hope that clarifies.
Yes, thanks, Brett. I appreciate it. I'm multitasking, but I'm listening. I'm getting families to advocate.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like one thing you can do, regardless of how this budget plays out, is to organize people and get them to speak out to the counties and say, look, we've got ideas, we've got people that can help, we have programs that we could scale up to help connect with young people that are at risk of juvenile justice involvement. Let us put us to work. And as it is, they could write your programs into their county plans, but it's going to take relationship building and advocacy to get that make that happen. And in the meantime, we're lobbying for the Youth Justice Innovation Fund. I put more slides than we're going to cover today, just so when we share these with you, you can refer to them. This explains the children's enhanced rate proposal we push for, the 195 million. When we're talking about healthy minds, healthy kids, this is what we're talking about. And it's more or less it's really a rate proposal reform, because we know the rates for these services are way too low. This is a deeper explainer of behavioral health carve out. And now I want us all to take a deep breath. Because I just covered a lot of information. I think folks have rightly pointed out, man, there's so much need out there, and there is.
And Brett, we have Yvette Sakina, posted in the chat about the importance of increasing this and understanding the impact of marijuana on youth development. So she mentioned that. I thought that was really important. But if she wanted to come off and share, what do you think, Yvette? Then I'll just read what she said.
Yes, please. I'm a little shy.
No worry. She said it is important. I just wanted to uplift you and give you an opportunity. Sometimes we write it, and then we think about it a little bit more. It is important to increase awareness regarding the potential impact of marijuana use on youth, particularly as it relates to brain development and cognitive functioning. Research indicates that that early and frequent marijuana use may affect attention, memory, decision-making, and overall cognitive processing in developing adolescents. As professionals working with youth and families, it is essential to provide education, promote informed decision-making, and support prevention efforts that prioritize the well-being and healthy development of young people. And no, I don't think it's out of context, Yvette.
If I may, I have encountered a lot good young people and adults, but that substance use of marijuana, it affects them cognitive, how to make decisions, how to think proper. And sometimes what they think is right is really not proper, but they don't have no sense because of the use. So it's everywhere, because sometimes I'm driving and I see it everywhere. And it's like, oh, it's okay to do it, but it's not okay to do it. And I feel that there isn't enough information for that. There isn't enough, especially in schools. When I was growing up, I used to get there used to be It was sex education and substance use education. I don't see that anymore.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if I'm out of fashion or I'm too old, but our children need to have this information. Our parents need to understand what it does to them.
Thank you, Yvette.
And sorry about getting all.
No, no, but you're absolutely right because there are some youth who are having I know of someone who found out that her son has psychosis related to marijuana use, and these things aren't things that, our generation or anybody before had because we don't know what's being put in, and people think it's okay. So, to your point, I wanted to uplift you. I also wanted to just kind of go to the chat that, Donna Masters is uplifting about work and employment training for kids aging out of foster care. All of these things kind of like are connected with the social developments of health, and these things are impacting them. So I just wanted to, you know, um, Michelle says this is a huge problem at LaSalle Residential Treatment Center. Oh, and then definitely when it comes to vapes. So I just want to uplift one or two things that were in the chat, and so that Brad was aware and that everybody else is aware. I don't know where everybody's coming from. People may not be, in a particular space. Heather Tafuro says, great point, event. Now that it's legalized, it's even more difficult to even discuss. Thank you, Heather. Brad, that's it for me. Uplifting.
Thanks. Yes, and for my own personal experience, I can say that as a young person who experienced trauma growing up and tumultuous childhood, I certainly reached for any sense of relief, and that might have been things that was certainly marijuana, and there are reasons that people reach for it, especially when you have a mental health system that maybe doesn't work for people, or people feel stigmatized about. Whereas using things like marijuana to sort of dull your pain and not think about your life or the world or things that happen to you is sort of a crutch. And that I'm 35, so that was true before legalization, and it's going to be true moving forward. But education about these things that is clear and not coming from an advocacy standpoint, because there's a lot of things that were wrong about the legalization of marijuana that resulted in people going to jail and prison, communities being stigmatized and facing mass incarceration because of it. Those things are all true. But I think because people were fighting for justice on that front, there is sort of a sense of like, oh, well, we can't talk about the real effects of someone, even if it's legal, using substances to dull their pain and the developmental delays that has for young people. Legalization didn't say young people can smoke, but the reality is, whether it was legal or not, young people were. And so they need information about that. Parents need to understand this not necessarily harmless, as using any substances at a young age is not harmless. Using phones isn't harmless. There's all sorts of things and distractions that you could look at as addiction, that are impacting young people. And I know I lived it. My brothers, my younger siblings live it. A lot of young people we talk to are living it too. Education is power. Information is power. And people need to understand these things more deeply and have the space to be able to have forthright conversations about it. So I'm 100% with you on that. I just wanted to share my point, my perspective, and then we can move on. So I said deep breaths. Don't take deep puffs. Sorry, just trying to break the tension, KK. Advocates. So where we are now, here's all these things we're not content with the state government, the governor's executive budget proposal. We want the Assembly and the Senate to push those things forward, and adopt our priorities. And so we're going to push them very hard. You're going to be seeing us asking to take action, to come out to events, to make phone calls, meet with your electeds, talk about these issues. All that is leading up to mid-March. Maybe March 12th is when we expect the Senate and the Assembly to release their one houses. We'll see where we stand, and then we'll look at, well, which issues are still alive? Which ones that have at least one house advocating for it? And those are the ones we'll double down on and put our energy behind, because we can only put our energy into so many things, right? And so we'll make that push, and we'll keep you informed about where things are and be adaptable and nimble. But all this is leading to Family Empowerment Day. We have buses coming from across the state. I am proud to announce we just added a bus from the Southern Tier. Thank you, Michelle Zook, if you're on. Binghamton to Oneonta is a new bus route. They are taking the bold step. And we actually just had a recent ad a couple of years ago. Someone did something similar, Sarah Taylor and BIPOC Peak out in Western New York. They're doing a Buffalo Rochester bus. And one of the coolest things happened when they started that bus. It was full. Their first time doing it, it was full. Minor correction, they're not stopping in Syracuse, and that's because Central New York, hey Nurgle, is taken over. They're going to do a Lowville, Watertown, Syracuse route. And I swear this time there's not going to be some horrible decision about the stop. We put the stop on the highway and didn't think about the fact that if people are coming from different directions, that stop would be impossible to get to. We fixed that. That's not going to happen again. Long Island's coming out. Yonkers and New Paltz in the Hudson region, thank you. And then 2 buses coming from New York City. Each of those buses has the capacity for about 52 to 56 people. That means that hundreds of people potentially could come to Family Empowerment Day at the Capitol. We'll be doing a rally inside the legislative office buildings. This is where all of them work. Imagine your lobby, your front desk, having hundreds of people chanting for family empowerment, family and youth investments, family well-being investments, resources for our communities. It'll be literally impossible to ignore us. And in case that's not enough, we're going to get loud. We're going to march throughout the Capitol. Hopefully, if the weather agrees, we'll go outside over into the plaza. And that'll be an awesome day. If you want to schedule meetings, please do. Please come talk to your supervisors. Talk to them about why this is so important. Talk to the young people and the parents that you interface with. Encourage them to come out. The more, the merrier here. And so thank you, Training and Credentialing, for putting the registration in the chat. Please sign up. It's a free lunch. It's a free day. It's a long day, to be perfectly honest. And so you should know that going into it. But the things that are going to happen in between the ride there and the ride back are awesome. They're energizing. You're going to feel the energy of the community and the network of so many people who are just like you from across the state. And it's hard to put a price on that. But that's what the day is, and we hope you can make it out. And we don't need to get into this today, Hope, but this is what we're going to be working on after budget. So after you've rested up after a nice Family Empowerment Day in Albany, just know there's a bunch of stuff we're going to be working on. Bill changes like Miranda rights for parents under CPS investigation, protecting informed consent for new mothers, staff ratios in schools, the right to remain silent, solutions, not suspensions for young people, and all sorts of good stuff that our network knows that families and young people need. And with that, I rest my case. How are you all doing? It's good to see your faces again. I've been staring at these slides for way too long. Does anyone have any questions or something they want to say?